Hey, what's going on, guys? My name is Brandon. Welcome to Audio Addiction, where you can find latest album reviews. You can find our band interviews, and you can find other musical-related content on the channel. I will be taking a bit of a hiatus for a bit, but I'm kind of catching up on stuff that I wanted to get out before I take, a long-awaited break. So, some of this material you'll be seeing come out more on a more frequent basis. I'll probably be making a video about it over the weekend, so stay tuned for that. But tonight we're going to be talking about Movement's newest record, No Good Left to Give. So I've been a fan of this band for a hot minute. They're signed to Fearless Records, and I found out about them through their EP, Outgrown Things, a while back. And it wasn't really until I got into Feel Something, which was released in 2017, that I really started to fall in love with this band. I've seen them, a decent amount of times at this point, back when shows were a thing. And, once this record came out and once I got it early, huge thanks to Adam Splitter PR for sending it over early. I knew I had to review it. I knew I had to listen to it, and I wanted to go into it, with as many listens as I possibly could. So, again, huge shout outs to Adam Splitter for sending me an early copy of the record. But I'm gonna go through each track, give you my thoughts and opinions on it, go through some pros and cons, and then finish it out with an overall rating. So the first track is called In My Blood, and this one really sets off kind of in a more somber tone. I know, especially in terms of Feel Something, a lot of their music in terms of that record is a lot more softer. There's definitely, some parts where there's a little bit of screaming here and there. But I would say for the most part, it's pretty melodic and somber at some points. But this one kind of, feels like a very, an iteration, of Movements, which is really cool. Also, I think it just kind of interlaced super well with, how the instrumentals are. They're also very, very somber, very melodic, and it's, what I've come to love with this band. The guitar work from Ira has this really cool kind of delayed, like echoey sort of effect to it, while, Austin kind of fills in that dead space, keeping the song really grounded as well. And I think that's a common thread you're going to be seeing throughout this entire record, considering they don't have a rhythm guitar player per se. I feel like Austin really steps up and adds these really cool bass lines that I don't think a lot of people were really expecting. So I really enjoyed his bass playing on this record, and I sure a lot of bass players will enjoy it as well. Speaking kind of in the same realm as that, Spencer on the drums, he does a really great job of creating this really unique kind of free-flowing aspect to his drumming. It really moves the track along and keeps, a really distinct rhythm to it. Then later on, Patrick comes in with, again, having the more somber attitude in terms of his vocals, and I think it really pairs well with the instrumentation and vice versa. I think they really marry well together, and I think it also shows off their ability to write songs and kind of put things together, because there's definitely parts where I was just like, it's pretty incredible over, like, I think it's only been 3 years since Feel Something came out, 3 or 4-ish years, and so I feel like they've learned a lot, they've grown a lot as artists, and so it's cool to hear that. I also think that it's cool that Patrick's stepping out a little bit more. He did a little bit of nice falsetto-y sort of parts in this track as well, but most of it keeps to that kind of lower middle register, which he's really good at singing at, but I'd love to hear him kind of expand a little bit more. The song really kind of starts to pick up the pace a little bit more, and I would say the bridge portion of the track, which starts at the 1 minute and 50-second mark to around the 2 minutes and 23-second mark, is when it ends. And I like that Patrick incorporates some screaming and yelling, reminiscent of their previous work, Feel Something. And I think that this is a good opener track. Again, it has that sort of old school Movements vibe in terms of like Feel Something. I wouldn't probably say as much outgoing things, but I would say, I would definitely say Feel Something for sure, because that is the most current record up to date at this point. And I think that it's definitely a song, a sound and song that they kind of progress more as the record goes on. They really kind of hone in on that sound, and I think they really expound upon it in certain songs off this record. So we're gonna move into track number 2, which is Skin to Skin. This is one of the singles that has been released so far, and on initial thoughts when I listened to it, because I listened to all of the singles prior to obviously getting the record, and I thought initially at this one, I thought this one was a really solid track. I still think it's a really solid track. I really do feel like it fits better in the record in the whole like grand scheme of things as opposed to a single. It does show off more of the indie nature of where Movements is heading, at least from my perception of that. There's this really cool like electronic, like I think it's like pianos, I'm not entirely sure, but it really kind of gets this, that melody really gets stuck in your head, and it's something that I think I come back to for just that reason alone. And I like that the motif kind of carries throughout the duration of the song, as I had mentioned earlier. I really like that Patrick comes into his own on this track. I think that he really, does a really solid job in the verses, but really shines in the chorus of this track. That's really when his delivery, I think, hits the most, especially towards like the latter half of the chorus. Once he hits like the last portion of it, I think he really sells it home. Something that I really think is underrated in this track is the lead guitar work from Ira. I thought that he does some really great lead stuff that I think would get overlooked for somebody that may not listen to the songs really super intently. And so I think it's just really good placement. Like there's definitely portions of the song, and I've listened to this record probably like 100 times now at this point, and just the way that it's placed in the track itself really lends itself to not only the other instruments that are playing, but I also think it lends itself to the way that Patrick does his vocals, and just the overall melodic flavor of the track, which is definitely really good. And again, I think it shows their maturity as a band as well. And when I think of Movements, this is the type of song that I think of. There's definitely another song off this record that I would closely assimilate to that Movement sound, but this one is definitely probably one of my favorite singles for sure. Just given the more like melodic nature of it, I think it's just really solid. So we're gonna move into track number 3, which is Don't Give Up Your Ghost. This one's the first one, the first single that has been released off the record. They released a really awesome music video. I have to give them kudos for that. The animation style is really awesome. If you haven't checked that one out, I'll leave a link in the description where you can check out that song, along with probably the other singles as well. But when I initially heard this track, I wasn't really stoked on it as much as I thought I was going to be, and I really do like Movements. Feel Something was one of my favorites from 2017, and this one it just didn't hit me the same way that I felt like some of the other singles that have been released had hit me at the time. Again, when Feel Something was out, and I think that now listening to it in the context of the record, I think it fits really well. It kind of is more closely assimilated to In My Blood, which I mentioned prior, and it has more of that chill vibe to it. The inclusion of piano is really well done. I think that they do a really good job of bringing in new instruments, not only in this track but in other tracks off this record as well. It just adds another really cool layer of melody to the track that I think the piano is definitely more of a prevalent feature in this track, especially in the verses. I think that's where you really hear the more dynamic nature of not only the piano but of the band as well. The drumming and the bass work are really well executed as well. Both of them really stand out to me as well. Again, having those sorts of like moments, especially in the verses where there isn't too much going on. I think there's a bigger expanse for arrangement purposes in that portion of the track. And I like that it doesn't really become too repetitive as well. I think that with a song like this, when it's a little bit more slowed down, there is a tendency for songs to become more repetitive. But this one just I think really works, and it doesn't feel like I'm listening to like this, the same verse, the same chorus. I think there's just a nice bit of variation with that as well. And as I mentioned earlier, I think that this one fits way better as in the record as it does as a standalone single. I think that my opinion of it initially was that I wasn't gonna like it, but I think in the context of the entire record, I think it really works better that way. And it really shines in terms of just like, what you can expect from the record, and when you listen through to the record and listen back to this song, it definitely fits in that sort of family of music. So I appreciate that. And another thing that I really appreciate is that vocal layering. I think that's really cool. I think that has a lot to do with Will Yip and his production style. He does a great job of like incorporating those different things. So huge shout out to Will Yip. He's awesome. As well as that, I think I think that the thing that kind of comes out the most in terms of the vocal layering is definitely in that last chorus / outro. That's really where I think the vocal layering and just the production value really stands out more so to me than at any other portion of the song in particular. So really enjoyed this one. Go check this one out. I would highly recommend checking out the music video. It is very awesome. So we're moving to track number 4, which is Tunnel Vision. If you're looking for more of a post-hardcore kind of like more rock-based track, I would definitely recommend this one. This one is also out. This is the most current single that is released to this date. And again, if you liked more of the sort of older feel something sort of stuff, you're going to enjoy this song because it is more rock. It has more of that nostalgia feel to it. And I thought it was really solid. I think one of my favorite portions of the track is in the choruses, and I'd say in the bridge more specifically at the 3 minutes and 28-second mark to the end. Patrick does this really cool like scream yell thing going on, and I thought that was very interesting. I know that he's done it in the past in previous tracks, but I think that in this track in particular, with the way that the lyrics are and how heavy they are, I think that the way that the emotions are carried in this track vocally really speaks to the lyrical topics at hand and how dark it feels, especially in terms of the musical stuff. In terms of instrumentation wise, I think it's definitely more on that darker edge, but as well as that, I think lyrically and like vocally, I think it also plays into that aspect as well, and it has that sort of cathartic feeling to it that Patrick is screaming these lyrics, and it has that feeling of it, and you can definitely hear a lot of the emotion and the rawness of it. And I think it really matches with this sort of heavier topic, lyrical topic, along with the kind of heavier nature of the track. So if you enjoyed this one, or if you enjoyed previous stuff from Movements, then you're definitely going to enjoy a track like this one. So we're going to move into track number 5, which is some of the more newer stuff, which is Garden Eyes. This one has a fantastic groove to it. I think when I first listened to it, I was just kind of, I would say I was kind of thrown back by how good it was. I didn't think it was, I was like, oh man, this is like good. Maybe I might not like it by the next time I listen to it. But when I came around to this song the next time, I was just like, man, this track grooves so well. And I think that it has a largely to do with the chorus. It's really catchy. You'll be singing along into that chorus in no time. I know there was plenty of times when I was driving in my car and I was like kind of humming the like melody in my car, and that's how I knew it was just going to be one of my favorites, just for that reason alone, just because it's memorable. It's a song that every time I come back to, I'm just like, it just puts a really big smile on my face. So I think melody wise, they really conducted something that, again, I mentioned is memorable, and it keeps you coming back, and I think that's really what is so appealing about this track. Something else that I found really appealing was Spencer's drumming. I think he's super dynamic, and he really keeps that really good energy going in a track like this. Having a song that's really more kind of drum proficient, you can hear a lot of the more dynamics, a little bit more of the energy behind it, and I think he really brings the effort and the heat in this track, and I really love it. The song definitely borders along the kind of indie rock shoegaze appeal, so if you enjoy the direction that they're going with some of the newer songs that they've released so far, guitar, then this is definitely going to be in your alley for sure. And I could see this song landing, on some like alternative radio stations if it hasn't already. It feels like that sort of song that you would hear on a radio that, is coming from like an underground kind of indie band. And I know Movements is for sure. And I know that they definitely have a following without a doubt. But I feel like for people who maybe aren't familiar with the band, then I would definitely recommend a track like this, because it does have all the like kind of like almost pop elements to it, but just in a more like kind of indie rock and like shoegazy sort of feel to it. So definitely would recommend Garden Eyes. That was one that I felt like a lot of people will probably sleep on, but it's really well executed. So we're going to move into track number 6, which is 12 Weeks. This one was very interesting to me as well. I think they took a lot of risk on this track. They experimented a lot. I like the usage of acoustic guitar. I thought that was very nice. As I mentioned earlier, brings a unique flavor to the verses of the song, and then is backed up in the choruses with some electric guitar, courtesy of Ira. The vocal layering is really interesting in this track as well. The call and response in the choruses adds this really kind of experimental nature to the track. I know it's not like reinventing the wheel, but I think the way that the melodies are arranged and the way that the song is arranged, I think is pretty experimental to me. I like that there's a little guitar solo at around the 2 minutes and 25-second mark to around the 3 minutes and 3-second mark. It wasn't something that I was really expecting, but I found like it was something that I was gravitating towards every time I was listening to this song. And again, was not expecting a guitar solo in any sort of Movements track, so they definitely did that, and I think it was really well executed. I also feel like they took a decent amount of risk in this track. This one feels a little bit different from the atypical, and I think personally it paid off, and I've listened to this record probably about a little under 100 times now at this point, and it's definitely one of the more unique tracks off the record. It has a memorability to it, and I think for good reason, just because it's so out of left field from what Movements is currently doing now. So we're going to move it into track number 7, which is Living Apology. This one is also very experimental as well. It's cool that they paired these two tracks together, having more of that like experimental kind of like they're testing the waters, and I really appreciate that as a band. Again, when you're waiting for a release to come out like 3 years after the fact, which again isn't like rushed. I feel like it's a good solid point for when bands record LPs and have them out. But there's a lot that can change in between those 3 years, and I feel like they definitely again pull for more of the indie rock scene of music, which is definitely cool. And I think this one just pulls in a lot more kind of reverb, a little bit more ethereal vibes to it, especially in the intro. This track is very kind of like open space, and I really appreciate that. The instrumentals really play around with the space super well too, and I think that both Spencer and Austin utilize it super thoroughly, and it really adds to the kind of the fuller sounds that you're expecting from not only this song, but I think from the record. As I mentioned, they don't really have a rhythm guitar player, so I feel like Austin and Spencer really had stepped up on this record by filling in those sorts of gaps. And you can kind of hear more of the intricacies of Movements as the kind of layers come together. You hear each distinct thing, and it also, again, has a lot to do with Will Yip and the way that he produces music. But also at the same point, I also think that, in terms of just the layering aspect of it, you can hear the bass, you can hear the drums, you can hear the guitar, you can hear kind of like real kind of ethereal guitar like lead bits as well. And I think that they each have their distinct moments, and it doesn't feel like one is really crushing the other. It just really works well in harmony. But if you're really intently listening, you can listen to the different layers and the different emotional values that are put into this track. And I think that is something that I really can't elaborate in words. It's something that you'd probably have to listen to, but I really enjoyed it. I've mostly been listening to it in these headphones, and I have a pair of like Bluetooth headphones that I've been listening into, and I feel like you can still distinctly pick out those sorts of layers. I'd say more so in these, because these are like studio headphones, but I even in like earbuds, I was able to kind of pick those things out. So again, has a lot to do with the production value of these tracks, but also just kind of the actual intent of doing it like that. I think it really works. I also really enjoyed that Patrick put a lot of emotions into the track. I'd say more so in the bridge portion of the song, again incorporating that sort of scream yell technique, that you can really hear those sorts of rawness of the track. And again, I think it pairs really well with the kind of open-endedness of this track as well. And I really enjoyed this one just because it was something that I felt like, again, much like 12 Weeks, was just something that was really different, that I think really works with what I expect movements to be doing going further from now. So we're going to move into track number 8, which is Santiago Peak. And I really enjoyed the melodic harmonies in the verse of this track. I think Austin's bass playing offers a really solid bass, no pun intended, that Ira builds off of. And I think that in some portions, and also probably a majority of this record, I think Austin really acts as a rhythm guitar player. There's definitely moments where you can hear him kind of doing the more like straightforward kind of like, like almost like playing chords on a guitar, but also like, inserting himself in ways that, obviously makes him seem like more of a proficient bass player. And I think that the way that he kind of straddles those lines between obviously, evoking the sort of, rhythm guitar aspect of movements, as well as, kind of creating the tracks and making it his own. I think he's really found a unique spot where, again, not only he offers that slot as a rhythm guitar player, sort of kind of, but also as, as a really good bass player, and kind of adding those kind of like licks and kind of, moments of fill that I think really, solidify a lot of these tracks to be what they are, and which are great. And I really enjoyed that. As, as a guitar player, I think it's impressive to see someone take that role and do it that way, to allow Ira to do kind of more melodic open things with the guitar and be like a little bit more ambient and be a little bit more open-ended with his guitar stuff in terms of the lead work, and then really kind of helping, Austin out in the choruses, where it's definitely a little bit more weaker in terms of, in terms of guitar work. So maybe it might just be me and like being those like very nitpicky sort of things, but it really adds this unique aspect to the band and the songs that they've created on this record, and I really appreciate that. It's kind of like a building block mentality in terms of their writing style. And again, I know I keep saying it, but I feel like it's the reason why this record feels so much more mature than their previous record, because I feel like they really took the time to write out these songs and really work on them and really put them together, and you can hear that. So I love that about this record in general, and I think it's one of those records that I feel like gets better every time you listen to it, because you're picking out different things. Another thing that I really enjoyed was the chorus. I thought it was really solid as well. And again, I love the vocal layering in this track. I think the way that they have kind of the melodies set up are really well executed, and I think this one is another really solid track off the record. So we're moving to track number 9, which is Seneca, and I felt a real emotional connection to this track. I think similarly to me, at least, which was Deadly Dull on their previous record, Feel Something. There's something in the way that Patrick delivers his vocals in this song that just strikes me. Like I mean, I'm sure I've definitely felt that way at some point in my life, where where I've been invested in someone, and just seeing them off to go do other things, and maybe that's where this song kind of tapped into me, like in my head and emotionally, because it really strikes a chord with me. It's not like there's anything flashy about it. It's not like there's anything, like really intricate about it. It's just really well executed. The songs really delivered well. And I think the lyricism, along with the way that Patrick kind of delivers his vocal lines, are just really and passionate, and I think you can hear that on a track like this. And again, very similarly to how connected Deadly Dull is to Pat, I'm sure. I feel like this one feels the same way to me in terms of like kind of the lyrical thing, and I really can't explain to you why, but it just really works, and it's a song that isn't flashy, and it shouldn't be. It's pretty straightforward, and it works the way it is. And I think it's paced well with like kind of the dynamics of the instrumentals, and they really follow that sort of like sad kind of emo nature of the song. And again, it's kind of as I had mentioned earlier, it kind of plays off of that whole nature of the lyricism affecting how the song sounds. And so I feel like this is another really great example of that as well. So definitely one of my favorites for an emotional connection, but also I think sonically it's very well done and very well executed, and I imagine there's going to be a lot of people that feel probably the same way about this song as I do. So we're going to move into track number 10, which is Moonlight Lines, and I'm going to say that this one's my favorite song off the record for sure. I when I first listened to this one and I got the stream, I was sold on this one. As soon as this song came on, I was just like, this is the one. There's one song off of every Movements record that I just probably play an exorbitant amount of time, and this one will definitely be one of them. And as I had alluded to earlier, this one feels very Movements-esque. If you love the band, you're gonna probably enjoy this song a lot. It really does take a lot of the best aspects of this record, and as well as Feel Something, and really incorporate it into one track. It has a really melodic beauty to it, but also really grooves super well, and I think that again has a lot to do with Spencer. I think he absolutely kills it on this track, and he really brings the song to life, and it just adds to that whole like the band's firing on all cylinders. And I really feel like in a track like this, they've really worked it out where the dynamics are awesome, the choruses are memorable, the melodies are awesome, and they're also memorable in their own right too. But I really enjoyed that, and I also really enjoyed that Patrick incorporated some larger passages of spoken word in this song. It was something that I really enjoyed in the previous record, but I felt like they didn't really utilize it too much in this record, which is more of a lyrical preference. But I thought it was really well executed, and it was inserted in a track that I felt like was worthy of that sort of lyricism and writing as well. The last bridge is probably my favorite portion of the track. It's super tight. The call and response has this really cool effect towards the end of the song, and I just feel like it really puts that icing on the cake. What I really enjoy about this band, and just like again, it just puts it over the top for me, and it was one that I felt super strongly about, and I still, obviously, as I'm alluding to right now, how strongly I felt about it right now. So we're going to move into track number 11, the title track, No Good Left to Give. This one is a mainly piano focused track. It's about a minute and a half ish, and I think it offers a nice kind of interlude to the record. There isn't too much in terms of like musical aspect to it to go over, other than the fact that the piano is really beautiful in this track, and I think Patrick does a really great job of kind of elating this message as well, and it's again keeping that sort of more somber tonality, which leads into the last track number 12, which is Love Took the Last of It. And I feel like this one song is kind of the song that starts their new sound. It's one that I believe they will kind of continue in for their next record. It has more of that indie-ish sort of vibe to it, that has been pretty much evaluated and utilized throughout this entire record, but I feel like it really hits its point in a track like this one. I think Patrick delivers a really good vocal performance, and I like the callback lyrically to the previous track, No Good Left to Give, in that last chorus bridge section. I thought that was really good. It is a really solid track instrumentally. I think vocally it's really well done too, and it's probably amongst one of my favorite tracks off the record. It's definitely a memorable one. I love the guitar work in this. I think Ira does a fantastic job, really bringing it home in this track. And I think this one really encompasses a lot of the sounds and that you'll hear on this record into one track. And I think that's probably something that I really dig about it the most. It feels like a collective track that just really ends off the record on a real strong note. So some pros and cons that I have about the record: I think Patrick sounds awesome in this track. I would love to hear kind of some more spoken word parts, but again, at the end of the day, I think he definitely sold me on Moonlight Lines. Really well done. I think instrumentally they took a lot more risk. They're a little bit more expansive in their sound, and I think that is an absolute pro. They really did some cool stuff on this record, instrumentally, and I think it's definitely a step up in every which direction. It's really catchy too. There's definitely some songs that I felt like are a little bit more catchier than others. I'd say Garden Eyes is definitely one of them. Seneca's probably a pretty good one too. Moonlight Lines is another really good one. I'd probably say Skin to Skin, in terms of the singles, are probably, to me at least, the most memorable ones. And then another pro that I have about it: I think dynamically it's really well done, not only kind of in the instrumentals perspective but also the musical perspective. There's a lot of different layerings, and I think, again, my other pro comment is Will Yip Rips, because he's fantastic. I think he did a really great job of honing in on their sound and really accentuating parts of the songs on this record collectively that really make it memorable, thoughtful, and just powerful. So I really enjoyed that. And then instrumentally, I think they took a lot more risk on this record. There's like acoustic guitar, there's piano, there's a little bit of electronic elements, there's like some reverby kind of shoegazy elements. So I feel like they tapped into a lot of different things that I'm curious to see how they're going to do stuff going further. And I would say the only con that I really have is, I would say, I would say that some songs could be perceived as a little bit slower, but this isn't really a hard con, at least for me. I feel like some people collectively might think that way about this record, but I think in general, I think there's a lot of energy to it. I think it's just a little bit more in depth, a little bit harder to find. So really enjoyed this record a lot. My overall rating for Movements, No Good Left to Give, I'm going to be giving it a 9.7 out of 10. This one I was really solid, really stoked about, and I felt like this one has a chance to be up there in my contenders for Album of the Year, and I'm glad to report it is definitely amongst the nominees, at least for me. It's pretty high up there. I've been listening to it a lot, so I want to kind of give some time off to it, and if I come back to it, I feel like it's amongst the top, at least for me. But if you enjoyed the singles, I feel like you're really going to probably enjoy this record. It's a little bit more somber in nature at some points, but I think overall, I think songwriting wise, I think they're definitely moving a step up, and I'm curious to see how their sound grows and evolves over time going further. So let me know in the comments what you think about this record. If you agree, if you disagree, I'd love to know your guys' thoughts are on the record. It comes out this Friday, so make sure to go pre-order it if you can. I know a lot of bands during the pandemic have been hit pretty hard, so if you want to support your favorite band, go buy their merch and go pick up the record if you can. I'm sure they greatly appreciate it, and we'll be getting back out to shows and supporting them very soon too. So if you enjoyed this review, share it, like, and subscribe. It goes a long way. Again, I want to thank everybody who's been taking the time to check out the videos. I'm sorry if it seems like a surprise that I'm going on kind of a little bit of a break, but I've been doing this shit for like over 4 years now, so I feel like I need a little bit of time to myself, and so, it sounds very selfish, but I'll be back to be making content to you guys very soon, and I'll have some sort of update video for you guys very soon. But my name is Brandon. We hope you got your fix, and we'll be talking with you soon. Peace.